Hello everyone, and thank you for joining this on-demand webinar, which as you can see is all about Google Analytics 4, an introduction to the present and future of web analytics. This is aimed for people who haven't yet implemented Google Analytics 4, are in the process of doing it or thinking about doing it in the near future. And if you've still got some unanswered questions about what GA4 actually means, this will be a 10 or 15 minute introduction to what GA4 is all about. And give you a bit of the history and a bit of the exciting information of what you'll be able to get out of GA4 moving forward. So my name is Ross Britton. I'm Chief Operating Officer at Equimedia. We're a full service digital performance agency, and one of the things we obviously specialise in is collecting really great analytics and really great data. And as you can see on screen, our motto is data, technology and people. Google Analytics 4 will be all about collecting much more rich and interesting data that we can utilise not just for reporting and trend monitoring, but also for empowering marketing going forward. And that Google technology will be really important in terms of how that's utilised by the people. That's where we come in, and obviously your teams will come in as well if you're looking at implementing this internally. So let's get straight into it. We've got a few slides to share, and please do share any questions on this video if you have any comments. Now, Universal Analytics is nearly dead, not quite yet. But as you can see on the far right hand side, the plan has always been to sunset Universal Analytics or GA3 by July of 2023, and we've known this since about March of this year. A little bit different if you've got a GA360 account. GA360 was going to be sunsetted in October of 2023. Google actually announced a couple of weeks ago now, so we're recording this on the 11th of November 2022, so a couple of weeks ago they announced that July 2024 is when they'll sunset GA360 or GA360 if you like, which gives, I guess, larger businesses with far more complex setups a bit more time. So that gives you an idea of how complicated this can be for some businesses, especially with very complex e-commerce setups. Google Analytics hasn't really changed much in many years in terms of how the data has been collected. So it's always been collected in roughly the same manner, and this change from GA3 or hit-based analytics to GA4, which is much more event-based, is a fairly significant change, and I wouldn't say it's massively hyperbolic to say this is the biggest change that's ever been made. And it is a tool that's kind of getting us prepared for reporting on web and digital behavior for the cookieless world. So I really would think of this as a preparation for what the cookieless world is going to look like. So what do we know about GA4? Quite a lot, and we know it's changing all the time. Now, Google Analytics 4 is really 8 key elements that make it unique. It's combining data from both apps and websites. So if you've got an app and you've got a website, those data streams will be linked together. Multi-platform measurement will be much easier, which is a massive positive. GA4 is privacy-centric by design. It gives your users with more intuitive and precise controls over what personal data is collected. It is preparing us for the cookieless world, and that AI and machine learning piece of GA4 is going to be a vitally important part of the future, and there's going to be a separate webinar or on-demand session where we talk about what beyond GA4 means and how you utilize the AI, machine learning, predictive audiences that are going to be collected in Google Analytics 4 is going to be a vitally important part of your future marketing activity. For any of you out there that are running PPC, we're already going to likely know about Google Performance Max and that kind of Google black box that allows you to utilize AI, and the way GA4 is likely to go is in a similar measure. GA4 utilizes a more accurate and flexible events-based system as well. So one of the key things to focus on when we're looking at the differences between GA4 and GA3 is that Universal Analytics, as you can see on the left here, does it at a user session hit level, whereas GA4 is all about events. It's all about events-based data collection, and that comes with challenges, and it also comes with a huge amount of positives. So it depends who you speak to, but you could argue that Universal Analytics has been hacked and hacked and hacked out for many years to deliver the insights that you want. And if you're working in any business right now, you're likely going to be comparing your GA data to other sources of data and saying, why is it so different? Or why are there such differences within the reports themselves that you produce out of Google Analytics? And one of the things that I think GA4 is planning on resolving is that everything's going to be measured in a consistent manner. And one of your key considerations, if you're thinking ahead now to setting up Google Analytics 4, or you've already got GA4 set up and you're starting to analyze the data, is you will see some fairly significant differences between your GA4 and your GA3/Universal Analytics data, because it is being measured in a different way. So if you have business critical reporting out there right now that's being used internally and to report to your superiors and to report on performance, it's really, really important to get GA4 and Universal Analytics live alongside each other straight away. So you can begin to work out, even though we know that the same amount of people and the same behaviors are happening on site, how is it being recorded in a different way, either up or down? Now, one of the key things to consider as well is the account structure has changed. So we're working with clients and new business prospects as well, whereby they may have had 25 properties and multiple views within those properties. And when you have complex businesses with multiple subdomains and shops and whatever it might be, microsites, you may have lots of properties and lots of views, and over time that becomes messy. Naturally it's going to become messy, and trying to make that less messy is one of the key challenges, and also one of the key opportunities of Google Analytics 4. Whereas before you'd have it by account, and then you'd have it by property, and then you'd have it by view. We're now going to be looking at purely at accounts, and then also at properties as well. So you're not going to have individual views anymore. It's going to be purely at a property level, and this represents some challenges in terms of how you segment your data out moving forward. One of the biggest challenges really with GA4 you can expect to see is that your GA4 reports versus your GA3 data, as I said, is not going to be comparable. Now, exploration reports is a really important part of that. This has changed. This is how quickly things change with GA4, as this used to be known as the Analysis Hub. Now it's known as exploration reports. And that's been the case for a little while now. Now, one of the things that comes straight out of the box with Google Analytics 3 is you'd have lots of funnel visualizations and things that you'll be able to set up. With all the reports that happen within GA4, it's a very different approach, and you're going to have to create fully bespoke reports that individually suit your needs. Exploration reports offers a range of advanced techniques that help you uncover some deeper insights about your customers' behavior, and GA4 provides a limited amount of out-of-the-box reports, but Explorations helps the user kind of go beyond those standard reports, and it's going to allow for a lot more in-depth analysis and bespoke reporting of GA4 raw event and user-level data within the user interface. These reports need to be built on a case-by-case basis, so one of the things I would start thinking about now, if you are thinking about setting up GA4 or already collecting your GA4 data, is what reports do you currently have within Universal Analytics that you're going to want replicated in GA4? You're going to have some additional benefits as well of the exploration reports. And one of the things that I would consider straight away is, how do you like to visualize your data when you're reporting to the business in whatever way it might be? Now, it used to be called Data Studio and recently got changed to Looker Studio. You can have a debate on which name is better, but the difference between exploration reports and Data Studio, there we go, Looker Studio dashboards, I should say, sorry, is that you're going to have the option, really. There's obviously going to be good connectors between GA4 and Looker Studio. So although the Analysis Hub, well, what used to be known as the Analysis Hub, but now is known as Exploration Reports, is good for those kind of regular reports, funnel reports, or path analysis, you're likely going to want some bespoke reporting created for the website, for your channel behavior, for your channel marketing, whatever it might be. And that's where Looker Studio may well come in, because it allows you to create far more customizable reports. So you're likely going to want a mixture between exploration reports, which again will look something like this, and your Looker Studio reports. But the key thing is just think about what you're reporting on now, but also take yourself out of the picture and think, if I could start again, what would I report on? And GA4 is going to give you a really good clean slate to create brand new reports and create brand new insights and add value with things like Looker Studio reporting. One of the other key things to think about with GA4 is that there are still many known unknowns, and I'm sure some of you have seen this before. But let's just quickly play this for those of you that may not have seen this previously.
Reports that say that something hasn't happened are always interesting to me, because as we know, there are known knowns. There are things we know. We also know there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there are some things we do not know. But there are also unknown unknowns. The ones we don't know, we don't know.
So a little bit of fun, and I'm sure some of you have seen the Donald Rumsfeld known unknowns and known knowns and there are known knowns. There are things we know with GA4. There are also things we know we don't know, but there will be unknown unknowns in the future. Google are obviously still iterating and still improving GA4, and that's going to be something that continues on and on and on. This is something that was announced on the 5th of October, for example, about how there's much greater compatibility now between Universal Analytics and GA4 e-commerce implementations. That's quite a big deal when you're thinking about backwards compatibility of your GA4 integration to ensure you're still collecting good Universal Analytics data. And since that time, there's been lots more announcements, and GA4 is still in development. So what you set up today will likely need to change again next year. You've just got to try and keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening with GA. So link in the bottom right hand corner there, but you'll be able to Google Analytics for release updates, and you can keep that as one of the tabs in your browser to continuously look at, because the likelihood is you're going to need to do that. So how can we help potentially? So we really have, the way we've bucketed this from a client perspective is we've got 3 different options or implementation tiers. So basic tier, so if you have a fairly basic brochureware website with some lead gen conversion points and some form fill points, that's really going to be all that's going to be required. It's kind of a more basic implementation. You're not going to need any enhanced e-commerce or any massive e-commerce functionality. You can still bake that in. But within all of these different tiers that we have, there's obviously GA4 training included, and fully bespoke setup fundamentally. If you're looking at different tiers, you're likely going to straddle all of these in some way, shape or form. But when you get up to the enhanced level of the program here, you're going to be looking at some pretty complex custom events. Custom events is going to be one of the things that pushes you towards the top end of the complexity scale. The more custom events you currently have set up on site and that you want replicated, that's going to make things infinitely more complicated moving forward in terms of migrating across the GA4. Your enhanced e-commerce implementation as well. If you have a complicated conversion funnel, whether that's in financial services, so a quote funnel, or whether in e-commerce and you've got a quite complicated shopping basket journey, you're going to have data layer considerations and enhanced e-commerce considerations. If you're talking about multi-site or multi-app, connecting the app and website data, that's going to push you more into the enhanced level. But really the way to think about it is your more basic setup is really trying to replicate your Universal Analytics setup as best you can, matching what is now known as currently goals in Universal Analytics to your conversions in GA4, utilizing the event-only setup. And as you move further towards the top, as I said, if you're going to have more of a complicated, enhanced setup, if you have lots of custom event tracking, complicated data layer that's going to need to change, lots of current reports that are in your Universal Analytics, whether that's funnel visualizations, connections to Data Studio dashboards that are daily, weekly, monthly reporting points. So this is just I guess a guide for you if you're currently in the process of thinking about migrating across to GA4, or well, everyone's going to have to do it obviously. But one of the things you can immediately start doing now is start interrogating yourself, really interrogating the team and saying, how much bloat do I have in my Universal Analytics account, and what can I do to maybe help resolve that? So that's a starting point in terms of, I guess, why GA4 exists, what the key differences are going to be, and some key things to look out for. One of the things that we're very conscious of when we're talking to clients about implementing Google Analytics 4 is, what does an implementation roadmap look like? And if you're at the very start of the process or you haven't thought about it yet, what we've got is a quick 8-step roadmap, which I'll talk you through now, that will give you a good idea of all the steps you need to take. So this 8-step implementation roadmap starts with the obvious 2 places, which is firstly, sit down and describe your site. What's the goals? What are the journeys? What's the current key structure? And why do key sections and functions exist? And that really maps in quite nicely with section 2, which is critique your GA3 setup. As I just said, a good place to start is look at your Universal Analytics, your GA3 setup, because bloat is likely. GA in its current iteration to a certain extent has been around for a long time. So you've likely got some broken goals, missing reports, data not collecting correctly. What are you really using? What do you really need? And use this as an opportunity to do a bit of a spring clean. We've looked at websites, GA4 accounts recently, Universal Analytics accounts in preparation for GA4 migration. And there are 25 properties and a multitude of views, and the data in those is very mixed. So it's an opportunity to tidy those things up. From then, when you get into the blue section here, you're then talking about really doing the specification. So GA4 is events based, so you want to recreate those GA3 goals as best you can to do a like-for-like comparison. And in terms of e-commerce, if you're an e-commerce business, any business with a complex online conversion journey where you're collecting any financial value, you've got key data layer considerations as well. So whoever's working on your analytics is going to have to work really closely with your developers to make sure the data layer is implemented correctly. And obviously your data layer will give you a lot more reporting value moving forward as well. You want to define your key conversion funnels. You go down to kind of the individual data entry sequential progression points, really, because you can actually get a lot of really valuable data out of Google Analytics 4 if you set it up correctly. And as I mentioned earlier, your exploration reports, your Data Studio, Looker Studio dashboards. It's going to take a while to get used to. That's going to be really important now to understand your key conversion journeys and make sure that you've got reports, whether that's exploration reports or Looker Studio dashboards, pulling in that data correctly. Then when we get down to it, there's going to be lots of automatically created classifications. So things like device source, etc. Those are all going to be automated going forward by GA4, at least as far as we know right now. But the biggest thing to think about in terms of your classifications from a segmentation classifications perspective is your custom event classes. Lots of custom events is a big job to migrate. So if you have lots of custom events, you're going to want to jump on getting your GA4 sorted pretty quickly. The final two steps kind of speak for themselves, which is all about test, learn, fix, work with the developers, ensure that everything is collecting the data as you'd expect it to. And really, you want to be using GA4 as your primary reporting tool from March 2023 onwards, especially if you're not on 360, which means you are going to stop, or your Universal Analytics data will stop collecting in July of 2023. So you want to be using GA4 as your single source of truth before you get to the point where you're forced to use it in that way. So that would be our best advice. As I mentioned at the start, if you're on GA360, you are going to have some additional time. So look into that. So I hope that was useful as, I guess, a starter for 10 on GA4. If you're new to GA4 or if you're just starting the process of a migration, hopefully that was helpful. And if you do have any questions, please do contact us. We'd be delighted to help. We at Equimedia love working with clients on GA4 migrations. About 95% of our clients are currently on GA4, and we're working to get those final few pushed over the line. So please do contact us on inquiries@equimedia.co.uk or visit equimedia.co.uk, or alternatively, just pick up the phone and give us a call. We'd love to speak with you. Have a great rest of your day, and I hope to hear from you soon.